Hi, everyone. I am here again with the Best of Boston Living team, Annalie and Ricky. I'm so glad to see you again today. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you. Same here.
Good.
Yes, doing great, wonderful, loving the sunshine behind me
Yes.
currently, and so excited to be on another episode and
Yes.
talk about buyers and sellers.
Yes. So I think today we are going to focus sort of on buyers and some of the common mistakes or pitfalls, maybe things that buyers tend to not understand or grasp. That way, the listeners who are looking to buy can be really well prepared for these sort of not make these mistakes that commonly are made. We were sort of just chatting about sort of one of the big ones is the contracts itself and kind of maybe what they're seeing on ChatGPT for other states and the misconception. So do you want to talk a little bit about that first, Annalie?
Sure. Yes. So, common mistakes I think that we run across and see is due to the increase of inventory that we have right now with the market changes and shifts, is that buyers and sellers, but more so buyers, are not taking the contract seriously. They're not reading the contracts. They're not quite understanding it. They think like, oh, well, there's 5 houses. Let's go and make 3 offers at the same time and see which one we get. Not understanding that when you actually make an offer, that's a legal binding contract. And I would
Absolutely.
love for you to explain a little bit more about the legal standpoint of view in the contract so that buyers can kind of understand what are they actually agreeing to.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think you're right, because I think in other states where you have sort of this one contract, one purchase and sale agreement that's signed that has a bunch of contingencies in it, whereas here in Mass, we are in a different situation completely. We have this two contract system. One is the offer, and then there's the purchase and sale. So buyers instinctively, even sellers instinctively believe, well, it's just an offer. It's not the contract. Well, it is a contract. It is a legally binding contract. There's been case law to suggest that with the offer alone, you can sue and win in court, meaning that when you are submitting that offer, one, you have to be very clear that you want, if you're submitting that offer to buy that property, that is your intention. Because if you get to a situation where you have a seller who's had a hard time selling, they could potentially sue you for specific performance, meaning trying to enforce the contract in court. Similarly, if you are, trying to apply to, not apply, but submit offers on multiple properties, you're in a risk of either, being sued for specific performance for a property that you're not proceeding with. Just the human side of things, wasting people's time and their hopes up and all those things, like that's tough. For additionally, if you don't have a contingency to be able to back out legally, then you're potentially going to forego the deposit that you provided. So it could cost you a lot in various forms, contractually, in court, or monetarily, and also just like bad karma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just
We definitely see that, I think, because I think that so many buyers think that, well, it's just like you said, it's just an offer. I don't
yeah,
have to perform. Well, and like you mentioned, in the state of Massachusetts, granted that it's a two-contract state, but like you said, realistically, you don't need to fulfill 2 contracts.
right.
And I think that that's what we do see a lot. Just like another common, I think, mistake that we see a lot is when somebody submits this offer with a binding deposit, and then they not really caring about the dates that they put in a contract. They always think that they have a way out, and you could speak for this too, Ricky, that, a buyer will say, okay, we got 10 days to do a home inspection. That's one of the contingencies. Well, they wait till day 8 or 9 to complete this home inspection. And then they say, well, we also have a legal right to do a radon test or a mold inspection or whatever other inspections they want to do, without understanding what the radon might take 3 or 4 days. So now you are past that time frame for your inspection contingency, and people not reading the contract, I think, because, well, now you technically need an extension,
Yeah.
correct? So you can't just tell us what happens if somebody waits till the last day to do an inspection and then they still have a radon contingency in it. What should they actually be doing?
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because as a buyer attorney, one of the provisions we always add in, because sometimes we're not told about radon inspections, and it's one of those things that maybe got forgot about, or maybe they just did it and we don't have results back. So one of the paragraphs in the purchase and sale agreement when we represent a buyer that we add in is the satisfactory radon results, just in case somebody forgot to tell us and it's there. Usually the sellers push back and say, hey, no, do you have the results? And then we, follow up with our client, and maybe we need to keep it in there for a period of time post P&S. But yeah, it just makes things difficult because especially, the market's different right now. I think now you're in a situation that as a buyer, maybe you have a little bit more of an upper hand and to be able to ask the seller for more time. Whereas, just recently, a couple of, months ago, a year ago, the sellers had the upper hand. And I've had situations where the sellers were like, no, you had your time. We're not going to extend further. And then you as the buyer have to make the decision. Do you feel comfortable with the information you currently have, or do you terminate under the inspection contingency at that point? So it's definitely timing. The one of the going back to the offer part, I forget which association of realtors does it, but one of them actually calls the offer contract to purchase versus the offer to purchase. And I think that that's a good change because, again, just going back to sort of the mental state of a buyer, seeing, oh, it's just an offer is not a contract. Whereas changing it to that contract to purchase language, I think is good for the consumer to understand that is legally binding. It is a contract. But yeah, I think that, go ahead.
No, I think as an agent, I think we should take our time explaining the offer because, like you say, an offer is a contract. So, and I think we make that mistake that we basically have the buyer sign an offer, but we don't explain in enough each paragraph of the offer what it means and to be on the legal side and make sure they protect themselves. But I think as an agent, definitely we need to spend a little more time on that and explain it. I try myself. I explain the dates, each
Yeah.
date meaning these, and try to go from top to bottom and try to make them understand. And a lot of buyer's remorse right now too. So, and
Right.
that's something we have to be very careful because again, it's a contract and we have to follow what the laws say about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think especially in our market where we've had a lot of flexibility and understanding from the other sides and, oh, well, it's okay. But now we're getting into situations sometimes where you're just dealing with difficult people on the other side, not necessarily the agents or the attorney. Maybe it's the seller themselves, or maybe it's the agent, or maybe it's the attorney who's trying to be tough about it. So I think there's been a lot of flexibility offered in these sort of, at the end of the day, everyone has the goal of selling the house, whether you're the seller or the buyer, usually, or else why are you selling your house? But typically you've had that sort of common sort of working together mentality. But again, as the market shifts and gets a little bit more buyer friendly, well, maybe now buyers are being a little bit more difficult. Whereas when it was a seller's market, sellers were being a little bit more diligent and saying, no, we're not extending further. We're not giving anything that's not in the offer is not coming in the P&S. So understanding as a buyer, and also I think, consumers in general, it's hard because you can explain it all the time, explain every single provision, explain the dates, and there's still things that maybe they either don't grasp or the dots don't connect until later and they're like living it and they're like, oh crap. That's why one of the things that we always put in our sort of our summary over to clients when they're going to sign a P&S is you have to be there at closing. If there's a closing date, you need to be there because so many situations where we've had clients be like, oh, I totally forgot I was on vacation that week, or whatever the case may be. And obviously that poses difficulties because the seller is relying on the dates that you submitted in that offer. So it's one of those little tricky things where making sure people are really understanding what it is they're signing, what dates they're putting in, does it actually work for me or not, and that sort of thing.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing that we've also noticed is when a buyer is ready to make an offer, in today's market, I think it is a valuable lesson for buyers to understand before you submit an offer, before you sign sign your name on those documents, understand what you're signing, number one, fully understanding the date and time frames, but more importantly, making sure you have talked to your lender and making sure that these numbers make sense to you, because we have seen more and more properties come back on the market due to financing.
Yep.
So, I think, so many buyers and sellers have, got so used to what the market used to be like. But with the rates that has gone up, they are not 2 or 3%. People forget to get pre-approved.
Right.
And that's a
seeing
very
those numbers
valuable.
in their face, like this is
Yes.
what you're actually paying for this particular house.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And it's a big difference, because I think so many buyers say, well, okay, well, I'm offering $20,000 less. My payment should be better. Well, don't forget about the closing cost. Don't forget about the changes. Don't forget about the upfront cost that it's going to cost you. And we see that more and more.
The hard part is that this is very much it's like you have to be logical, but it's also very emotional, because they get tied to the house, or, it's a very interesting process to balance, for sure.
Yep.
Totally agree with Annalie. I think prior to make any offers, I personally like to have a conversation with the lender, and to make sure the buyer has also a conversation with the lender. And because the first thing they ask me usually is, oh, so if I offer this much for this property, what my payments will be? Obviously, that I can run numbers, but my number is not going to be even close with the lender probably have on paper, or with all the information he got from the buyer. So that's the reason I'm always recommend them to have the conversation prior to put an offer on.
Yeah.
And that will make things easier, for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think, kind of circling back to understanding the contract terms, making sure you're very well versed from your loan officer to know what it is that you're, when you're submitting that offer, what you're committing to pay at the end of the day, and what that looks like for you and your budget and all those things. I think sometimes, until that property is like, this is the house, and then they're seeing themselves in the house, so they're seeing themselves living there for the future. It, like, I don't know, I feel like it doesn't make it real until that moment, and then they're like, okay, but wait, I have to pay for it, and this is how much I have to pay for it, and this is how long I'm probably going to be paying for it, and that sometimes does change things for a buyer. I definitely have seen a little bit more buyer's remorse in this market in the last in the last month or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's it's definitely a shift. And I think that everybody, buyers, sellers, agents, brokers, attorneys, everyone out there needs to just be a little bit more cautious of what they do before they put their signatures or something, and understand exactly the consequences that come with it. Because it's just like, not only is it the financing and the inspections and all the contingencies, but I think another common mistake that I think we see a lot is buyers forget to get all the information about a property, right? People are so used to what we used to be, and how fast you had to jump to make offers and not consider the consequences with it. But not only is it an expense taking on a property, you got to pay for it, but it's also the maintenance of the home.
Right.
That's other common mistakes we see, that buyers forget to find out, well, what does it cost to run this house?
Right.
Right.
I think
we've new and old, right?
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, so long as you've, having that budget in mind, because obviously there's what you can afford and maybe what you should afford. You know what I mean? So you could get that particular loan that's at the top of your budget. But then you're potentially, losing sight of maintenance costs. You're losing sight of, lifestyle things. So I have seen some transactions where, maybe clients have gone a little bit too far over what they should have bought and then sold, and now are buying something more in line. So I think, again, it's information, right? I feel like information was so limited, not that it was limited, it was just actions were happening so fast that there was so little time to process for buyers that now, because they have that extra time to process, maybe their actions, they're still trying to get something quick, but then they have the time to reflect. So maybe having that reflection time before, so that way you're not necessarily going to disappoint, get in a situation where now a seller's back on the market or whatever. So I think having, maybe slowing down,
Yeah, I think it's very important in this market that buyers should have like a buyer's consultation, sit down with the agent and ask all the questions, and obviously the agent provide all the information or somehow explain the process of what it will take to buy a house. So that way they can be a little more prepared when they're ready to put an offer. I think that's something that we should all implement.
That's a valid point for sure, Ricky, because I agree with you 100% that we are not 2023, 2024, 2022 anymore. And don't lose out of the opportunity to sit down, have your buyer consultation, and fully understand what it's involved and what it takes to buy a house.
Yeah.
Because you have the time to do it.
Yeah.
Don't lose out on that opportunity anymore.
For sure. For sure. So if you had one sort of piece of advice for a buyer in today's market, what would it be to sort of avoid these common mistakes?
I can start if you want me to.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing right now is like have a great or good representation. Hire a professional, someone with experience, someone who knows the market very well, especially if you know where you want to be when you purchase. Make sure that person that you hire to help you in the process has enough knowledge to help you and protect you in this market.
For sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That one takeaway would be for sure, make sure you hire the right person that works for you.
Yeah.
And explains things in details, because you can work with somebody that you like, doesn't mean that they're going to have your back.
100%. And it could be, I think that there's, in that respect, there's a lot of that in the legal field too, where, oh, well, I'm just going to use my cousin Jimmy, who's an attorney, and maybe they may be a great cousin, but maybe they are a general practitioner. They don't see this every day. They're used to maybe longer timelines. You have to be diligent. You have to be on top of your game. And similarly on the agent front, like maybe it's a hard conversation to not hire that family member agent who does it on the side. But at the end of the day, this is a big deal. It's a big experience. It's a big transaction, something that you're going to, the biggest expense typically people make in their lives. Do you want to chance it on that family member who doesn't have the experience, or hiring someone who's a professional who does this every single day and really knows the market well? So I think those are great tips. And I think this is really super helpful for all those buyers out there who haven't taken the plunge yet, but are wanting to avoid mistakes. This is a great video for you to watch, and I hope you share it. And I am so happy to see you all again. And next time we'll have another topic to chat about.
Absolutely.
Sounds wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.